do. And I think we're live. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. Just one moment, getting started here. I got to tweet some people to let them know we're starting. I got to tweet some people to let them know we're... Twitter, what's up? I have a TikTok now as well. You can follow me on TikTok. What is my TikTok? Is it just John Vanderveer? Yep, just John Vanderveer. So that's me. Go follow me. I have like about 100 followers on TikTok. 62 fans. Get out of here. It's 90 something. Yep. I need to get to 1,000 so that I can live stream to TikTok. So help me up, or help me out. So here we are on Twitter, and I just want people to know that we're going to be doing Supabase today. Wait, there's no Next.js. And Next.js. Supabase, Next.js, Prisma. Yep, what else are we going to do? What are some of the big buzzwords? Supabase, Next.js, Prisma, and SWR. That's the other one. I don't know if there's an at SWR. Let's say React people care, web devs care, web developer. Who else cares? Versal probably cares. Versal status, Versal support. Nah, that's good. Okay, cool. And then I'll throw my YouTube link in there too. Is that my channel? I don't know if that's my channel. I love the progressive load that YouTube has going on. Oh, is it just froze there? That's not good. YouTube, your redirect is slow? Oh, you're so much better than that, YouTube. I know you are. I know you are better than that. All right, cool. Tweeted, people are informed, people are joining. So here is the overview of today. So first, since Moonlog 4, which is the 5th because they're 0 indexed, because I thought that would be cute and it's like confusing. So since the last episode, the e-commerce starter on which Futurecaster is built has gone through a major revision. So I want to adopt those major changes, and the best way to do that is to completely restart Futurecaster instead of trying to merge all the changes. So since I'm doing that, we're going to make it a Futurecaster 2.0 major breaking update, and I'm going to show you all how I do that in a Git repository. If I'm going to just blast master with a 2.0, what do I do? Basically, TLDR, I use an archive branch. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're also going to take this opportunity to go through lessons learned in my 1.0 exploration of this architecture. And so basically there's 4 key elements of this architecture. One's the e-commerce starter, one is SWR, Supabase, and Prisma. And so we're going to talk about some lessons learned there so that we can define the architecture for 2.0. Because I am going to change it. I'm not going to do the same thing. Since I'm having this breaking change, I'm going to take that opportunity to improve some things that weren't working very well. Okay, and this link, it's in the description of the video, and anyone can access this link. It's going to be viewable on your side, not editable, right? But one of the big changes that I'll be doing, it seems like small, but it's kind of big, is I'm going to be moving the Futurecaster feature folder a level up so that it becomes a sibling of the e-commerce framework as opposed to a child. So that's the simple explanation. And the logical correlate of that, what is the implication there, is that I'm not trying to integrate my features with theirs. They're going to sit side by side and they're not really going to interact. And basically that's because they don't integrate well. The e-commerce starter just doesn't integrate well with non-commerce features. So let's dive into that. Let me pause for a second and make sure that's where I want to go next. Okay, almost. Let me finish this. Two other things I want to say before we dive into that. So one other thing is that whenever I push Get recently, GitHub is like changing the authentication patterns they support so that they don't support user password, and I need a token. So I think this is going to affect a lot of people, so I thought I would do this live, is upgrade my local to use that token. So we'll do that. And then we're going to review learnings, upgrade Git, and restart the repo. And the last thing I want to do before I dive into those learnings is I want to show you where the app is at this current finishing point. So hi, Jay Vandeveer. So I think like last video, if I recall correctly, this was the thing that wasn't quite done yet. I wasn't getting user data right here. So let's see what I did. And this is going to kind of be a segue into some of the changes that we're making. And I don't care if you know my email address. So if you see it on screen, don't freak out. So here I'm using SWR to get user data from API user. This is a route that I define right here. Futurecaster API user.ts is the current structure. In the future, that would be a sibling of framework, not a child of framework. But yeah, this is kind of the next way to do it. You have a page which is named like the endpoint, basically, under API. So it's kind of standard. Here I have the Prisma client and the Supabase session. And I'm using Next Iron Session, which I've also had the pleasure of contributing to. And I did the TypeScript POC for them. So that was fun. So here's the with session hook. That is a strongly typed Next Iron Session wrapper. Okay. So this is the endpoint handler. So somebody hits the API/user endpoint. I'm hovering it right there on the right side of my screen. Let me make sure that y'all can see. Okay, my face is on the left, right? Okay, great. So you can see that I'm hovering API user. And that is the endpoint, and we can see the preview. So this is the response that I'm getting from it. I can also just hit this directly. I can open up a new tab and hit API user directly. So the Chrome browser is making a request to my server at this file. This is the code that handles it. That's why we call it a handler. So it ends up going here. The routing is automatically done in Next. So technically this would be more like a service and an MVC. So it's more like a controller than a router. And so whenever you come into the handler, it already has the session in the middleware. Okay? And that's because of this with session hook. So the with session hook, we scroll down, it wraps the handler. Okay? And that is how we get the JSON Web Token session. That's how we get the session. JWT is really great. It's super awesome. It's how a user can log in and stay logged in. That's the TLDR. It's basically how we know that you're logged in, is that we use a JSON Web Token based session with Next Iron Handler. Okay, and so that's using this with session hook that wraps the ordinary Next Handler. So the ordinary Next Handler now becomes a Next Iron Handler because we're passing in the Iron Session. Okay, and so it just magically exists on rec.session. It's not magic, it's actually appended in the middleware. So it'll append it to the request object. That session is a two-part session. So there is the the main session, and then that main session, which is my application session, has a child, which is the Supabase session. So if you've seen my previous logs, this is basically how I handle the fact that I cannot directly log into Supabase. This is part of the lessons learned. So we're gonna rushing through everything, and then we're gonna circle back and clarify it. But this is just kind of prep. So this is some of the stuff that I've had to do to get these tools to work. What I would like them to do is I would like them to just work. They didn't just work. So basically I have my own application session, and then there's a Supabase session underneath. Okay, so Supabase is handling the authentication from a database perspective. Okay, so like I can go over to Supabase and show you, like I said, I don't care if you know my email address. So like this is the app users table. And that's me, John Vandeveer, username J Vandeveer. That database data is what we are seeing passed through to the client when it says hi J Vandeveer. So that's coming from Supabase. Okay. This is a Postgres table, so it's not using only the Supabase authentication. So the Supabase authentication is a special feature which lives outside of the Postgres. So here is the Supabase authentication. There's my email, and it just couples to a UID. That's it. Also called a UUID. So that UUID I map in my own Postgres table. It's a foreign key auth ID is what I call it. And that's how I map this person logged into Supabase, so get this record out of my runtime database table. I think that all makes sense. And so that record is what ends up being on this user object. So there's the question mark syntax, which means like if it is defined, use it. If it's not defined, use undefined or null, one of those. So basically, this conditional check right here says, if you're logged in and we were able to fetch your Supabase user, including that table data that I mentioned. I'm sorry. This is just the Supabase authentication. This is just the Supabase authentication layer. So that will be the UID. So the Supabase session doesn't have the table data, it just has the metadata, including the UID. Cool, so out of the metadata, I get this ID, which is the UID, and then I use Prisma to find that table data. Okay, so where the foreign key auth ID is equal to the ID from the metadata. So here I'm using Prisma to get my table data. Prisma's going strong, it's working beautifully. It's doing its job, very simple. Only one line of code concerning Prisma here. Okay, and this is all happening on the server side, by the way, which is secure. Why don't we just use the Supabase client on the client side? Because that's less secure. And we'll go through the lessons learned, but basically it exposes the user's email address if I do it that way. So that's not good. And the JWT that Supabase uses today is not encrypted. It's an unencrypted JWT. And it can show up in the browser URL. So literally I'm streaming here and you could be watching me and see my URL and like grab those characters and like steal my email address. I don't care about that because like I'm fine with you knowing my email address, but other people do care. So it's like not super secure, so that's why I have to use this indirect pattern where I request over, iron session encrypts it, Prisma can communicate and get that secret data in a secret way. Okay, cool. So after all this happens, it's still not guaranteed that their username is defined. It eventually should be. Like practically speaking, if they've signed up, I should have their username. But just from a programming language type safety error prevention perspective, I am checking, is the username defined? But like practically it always should be. Okay, so I get that username. And then I ship it in the response JSON. And that's how it gets here. So that's how it gets here, but how does it get into the DOM? through SWR. So user nav is the component name. This is all React, right? TSX, because types are awesome. Let me open up my Restream chat in case y'all are trying to talk to me. Oh no, how many bicycles are in the images? Come on, let me just have my stuff, man. Did I get all the bicycles? You click it and like a new picture pops up with like another bicycle. And now, where are all the cars? Please try again. I hate this so much. One of these pictures has a truck. Does that count as a car? Apparently it did, because now I have to try again. A bus. All right. I'm so mad about this. Okay, we're in. Hello. I think it's working. Okay, great. So if you have any questions, hit me up. And that chat will support like YouTube and Twitter and Twitch, so hit me up. And then I guess I should keep an eye on my TikTok. That's gonna be like too much stuff to juggle. Sorry guys. Yeah, don't message me on TikTok. I mean, I'll reply to it later, but not during the stream. Okay. So use SWR is making a request to that endpoint that we defined. Okay. So stale while refresh is what that means. Use stale while refresh. So this is a hook provided by the stale while refresh library. So this is a top level hook, okay? And we're going to contrast that with the e-commerce hook composition API, which is not good. And so that's going to be one of the lessons learned, is that you want to do it this way, not using the e-commerce hook composition API. Okay, just use SWR directly. It's way simpler. Slight catch here. Yeah, even trying to use SWR, the e-commerce starter itself has something called default fetcher. So if you go look up default fetcher, it says that it's returning fetch, but that's a lie. So you can't even use the default fetcher that returns fetch, because when they say they return fetch, they're not really talking about the fetch that all JavaScript developers mean, which is the window fetch. They're not referring to that. They're actually referring to what we would call fetcher, which is you need to supply your own. So they should call it fetcher, not fetch. Anyway, so that's just another confusing thing. I like unfetch. So that's an isomorphic fetch that will work on the browser, and it will also work in your node environment. And that's important because Next.js, we want it server-side rendered, so everything's super fast. That's one of like the key value propositions of Next.js, right? So takeaway, use unfetch. You can also use, there's also one called node fetch, which is pretty good, node fetch. I'm not sure that this is truly isomorphic. You might need to do like, does window exist, does document exist, and like choose whether to use the window fetch or the node fetch. You might need to do that. Or it might just work, I'm not sure. And then there is one that is also called isomorphic fetch, which I've also had a great experience with. And that one does work on both sides. Although it seems to be trending flat or maybe even slightly down. Yeah, slight 461. slightly down. 4648, 464, 461. Yeah, so slightly down. Although I've had a great experience with it. So with all those options, why did I choose unfetch? Because that is what SWR recommends right here. And it worked great for me. Okay. So now we're on the user nav. We use SWR, and we supply this fetcher, which uses fetch from unfetch. And it's that easy. Then you have, it will provide an object called data, but you can see like all three of these hooks are providing an object called data, so we alias it. So the first data is data, which really, I would prefer that be aliased as cart. Okay, let me go ahead and do that. I'm gonna alias that as cart. Let's alias all of them for consistency, right? Okay, so I made the point about default fetcher really doesn't work. And that's another example of why I can't use the e-commerce API for my own non-commerce provider. And so that's going to be a consistent story that we see, that if I try to use the tools in the e-commerce API, they don't work. They're all assuming a top-level provider data type. And that top-level provider data type is an e-commerce specific data type. It'll take like, basically it takes like a cart cookie. And if you don't have a cart cookie, you can't use the stuff. And like only stores, only e-commerce sites have cart cookies. Like my Futurecaster API, there's no cart cookie, so I can't use it. That's kind of fast forwarding, but basically, that's another example of I can't use their stuff, so I'm just going outside of their stuff and using SWR directly, which is really way simpler, okay? And so I get data, alias it to user, we'll drop that console log, and then user, and I actually don't do anything with error, so let's delete it. I was using that earlier. And then user is used down here. If user exists and has a property called username, then we display hi user.username. That's just your basic React, right? Okay, cool. Quickly commit this. This will be, is this a feature or what? Yeah, alias cart. Feed alias cart. Cool. I'm on a Windows machine, so everything's slow, of course. Okay. So that is the top level summary of like the state of the application today before we restart it. Yep, and hi Jay Vanderveer, everything is working. Cool. Boop, 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 boop. Still got those random future generated. So this is good. So let's go to the lessons learned. So the first lesson learned is that e-commerce starter is not awesome. So the e-commerce starter, I don't know how long ago it came out at this point, like 2 or 3 years. And it was at it was Next.js conference, I think. And they revealed it, I think 2 years ago, like not the most recent conference, but the one before that. I think that's right. And they said this guy comes with all of the e-commerce Next Vercel community best practices implemented. So this is going to be their recommended starter for anyone using Next. And I said, awesome. And plus it comes with e-commerce integration for free. I'm like, this is great. Let's try it out. So tried it out, but I got to tell you, it doesn't have the best practices that it claims to. And there's 2 specific issues with this bad boy. Okay, one is the SWR hook composition API. We touched on that a little, but I'm going to walk you through. This API is 5 to 7 levels of unnecessary abstraction. Okay, 5 to 7 levels of unnecessary abstraction. It's not intuitive. It's indirect. It's hard to follow. It's hard to debug. It's hard to use. It's hard to integrate. It's really complicated. And I kind of see why they do it, but my advice would be just don't follow that pattern. They want to do that to standardize their e-commerce integrations, okay. But if you or me come along with our own API that's non-commerce, frankly, even if we're trying to connect our own API that is commerce, but it's not pre-connected, it's our custom connection, don't follow this pattern. Use SWR directly, okay? And we can fast forward to say that SWR itself is awesome. So I gotta be honest with you, I had such a bad time with this hook composition API, and it was one of my first experiences with stale while refresh, that I thought it was the fault of stale while refresh. I was like, wow, this is so terrible. I actually miss Redux. And I'm like missing thunks. Like that's how bad this is. Since then, I've realized that SWR is awesome, okay? And it is just the implementation of SWR in the e-commerce starter that's bad. It's the composition API that's the problem. So use SWR. We've basically already shown you how easy it is, but you can do a one-line request just like fetch. Technically, you need to plug in your fetcher, so it's like 2 lines, whatever, splitting hairs. It's really simple if you want to use it directly. And yeah, here's how you define the fetcher, okay? So it's really 2 lines to be able to make a request, and that request stale while revalidate is the strategy. What that means is I'm going to show you a cached version of some data, and that way you as a user, you get to see something immediately. It's super fast. Constantly, automatically, fast and reactive. That's what they brag about. I put an issue on here because they need to talk about the gotcha. There is a gotcha. But basically, this is the true value proposition, and they're right about that. It's super fast and reactive. And you can do it in 2 lines, which if you implemented that with Redux, right, you would need your selector. You would need a use effect that will dispatch to trigger an HTTP request that's over in a different file. You would need your Redux like toolkit and create your Redux slice. And so then the HTTP, so first your selector would call to the slice would be empty, and it would make an HTTP request. That would come back, and then if you wanted caching, you would have to manually add caching into your slice. And so the next time around, it would check the cache first. So you can do it, but it's not 2 lines. It's like a couple dozen lines and like at least a few different files. And so you can see the pattern here is just to use SWR directly within the profile component. So this is within your existing component. This is not some other component. And that's what I ended up doing with this user nav component. We just use SWR right here. Love it. Great experience. Okay, so we knocked out that SWR itself is awesome. That's basically done. Back to e-commerce problems. There's the composition API that's a problem. I'll take you through that. And the commerce-specific provider types and architecture. So this is saying that non-commerce feature sets do not integrate well with the commerce architecture. And that's because there's a multi-level abstraction chain, and at the top of that is an entity called provider, which you would think is like a generic API provider, right? No, it has to be a commercial provider. And I'm going to show you why. And basically, I already talked about this. It's because it has a cart cookie that's non-optional. So you can't implement it without a cart cookie. And you can modify it, and you can say, hey, you know, this is the new provider, and then the one that used to be called provider is now called commercial provider. You can do that, but at that point, you've basically moved away from the e-commerce architecture. If you go talk to one of the developers on the e-commerce starter, and you say, oh, I'm talking about a commercial provider, not a provider, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? We only support commercial providers. This is the commerce starter. I actually left issues on their GitHub. This was prior to their major renovation, and they closed my issue, and they said, you know, we're going through a major renovation. Hopefully it addresses it. So no hard feelings there, but basically they said, I pointed out that this hook composition API is super complicated and not necessary, and they said, oh, we're going to keep using it. And their reason is a decent reason. Their reason is for commercial API consistency. So they have these higher order hook creators that force various properties consistently across their commercial providers, which is fine if we only want commercial providers. But if I want Futurecaster, which is a fully featured application with a major store feature, okay, so I want like integrated store as a service or store as a feature, not a standalone store. I want an application with a store that doesn't play nice to each other. So for this 2.0, we're going to give it another chance, but we're changing the strategy away from deep integration towards shallow integration. And so basically we're going to have the e-commerce sibling of Futurecaster, and they're going to live in the same repository, but they're almost going to be like two different microsites, right? So this will be like a micro front-end architecture, which I've only done a micro front-end architecture once. It was okay. It was okay. So we'll see if it works out. Maybe it will work out. Maybe that will be just fine. So basically the lesson is we need to, at project initialization time, pick one of these two approaches because switching is expensive. And that's why we're restarting now, and we're going to start fresh and pick one of these clean architectures instead of trying to go from Futurecaster 1.0 and switch over, which would be really difficult. So first architecture is that the e-commerce site can be a standalone site, and it can continuously pull from the upstream e-commerce repository and gain all those updates consistently. And I don't have to deal with resolving conflicts and like revising like architectural changes, because there weren't any architectural changes because I kept it separated. Keep it separated, right? So that's one approach. The other approach is you can have deep integration, but don't view the e-commerce starter as an upstream that you're going to continuously merge and gain all the features if you do it with deep integration. If you do it with deep integration, it's going to be a launch pad. Can you bring him here? Okay. If you do deep integration, it's going to be a one-off launch pad. Okay, it's not going to be continuously synced. I think this is in general like a second best pattern, because if e-commerce version 3 or version 4 comes out and it has all these really cool features, you're going to have to start your application all over. It'll be breaking every time. So I don't think that's optimal. So I think the standalone site is more optimal. So that's what I'm going to go for. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, I'll just throw the e-commerce starter out, honestly. Okay. So let's go through the complicated SWR hook composition API. So we'll start with one of their working hooks. I think use customer is a fine example. So here's a use customer hook. This is already a second level abstraction because the use customer hook itself is what we use in the component. So with SWR, you have a one level abstraction. Use SWR hook. With this use customer pattern, the first level of abstraction is the use customer hook. So in this sense, they're sort of even, right? The difference is that with use SWR, it doesn't go any further. That's the furthest level of abstraction. I guess you could argue that the fetcher is an abstraction. So, okay, if you want to really hate on SWR, you can say that it's a two-step abstraction. Okay. So use customer, step 1. Now we're in use customer. Okay. Here, I export default use customer as use customer. That's just the type. We're not going to count that against them, which is a type of handler. Okay. So this customer hook itself has two higher level abstractions. One is the handler, and one is this other thing that's also called use customer. This is where it gets really confusing and bad, okay? So even if I'm talking to another developer about the use customer hook, it's like which one becomes a problematic question. So that's already confusing. Come here, baby. Sam's going to bed.
Hug.
Love you. Have a good dream. Okay, so the use customer lower order hook is an implementation of the use customer higher order hook. And the reason for this is that this is a generic commerce, and this is their cross-commerce hook that will be implemented specifically for a particular commercial provider, such as BigCommerce. And there's another one for all of these. Shopify has its own. Swell has its own. If they add another commercial provider, they will all have their own use customer hooks. Okay. So here is this is pretty much as complicated as this gets. There's the use data thing we can go look at. Okay, it's not taking me over there. Use data. Use hook. Yeah, this is kind of confusing, right? Because use hook produces a hook and it consumes a different hook. We'll put this to the side, but this is like, there's like a few abstractions there. I think it's like 3, but it's not the deepest root. So the abstractions branch out basically, but this is not the tap root of abstraction. If we want to go for, like I said, it's 5 to 7 levels of abstraction deep. This is not going to get us to that 5 to 7 number. I think it's going to get us to like 4. So let's go over here. So this is level 2. Here is the level 3 abstraction, the higher order use customer hook. Okay, export default use customer. If we look inside, what is use customer? It is it's a hook composer. It creates a hook from a couple things. From one, your configuration here, to this select. It's basically a selector function right here that's going to select out of state. Basically, they don't call it state, but that's basically what it does. So we need the input, which is the configuration. We have and so here are the 2 abstractions that are even higher order. And then there's the fetcher, which you need a fetcher either way. So, but if we counted it against the other one, we'll count it against here. But again, that's not the tap root. So this would be, here's abstraction level 1. Yeah, abstraction level 1. Here's abstraction level 2. And then so fetcher here would be abstraction level 3, but that's not our taproot. So we have use hook and use SWR hook. This is not use SWR hook from the SWR library, right? That was called use SWR. This is use SWR hook. So the e-commerce API is composing an SWR hook. Okay, so this is not SWR doing this. This is the e-commerce API way of doing things. It's not the SWR way of doing things. It's the e-commerce way of doing things. So use hook and use SWR hook is our level 4 abstractions. All right, we're tracking, right? So they both come from this use hook util folder. And so here's use SWR hook. There's another one that we're not seeing in this chain. It's called mutation hook, but it's basically equally complicated to use SWR hook. We'll get there momentarily because they do pin up at this provider thing, basically. So this is the top level provider entity, and you can see that the children are SWR hooks or mutation hooks. So they're an equal level of abstraction. Okay, so back to use hook. So there's use hook. There is use SWR hook. There's use mutation hook, and there's use fetcher. Where's our fetch over here? Fetcher. Yeah. Okay, so I missed it. So here it says fetcher, right? And so I said that that's equal to the fetcher that you saw elsewhere. Actually, it's not. So this fetcher has like 2 more hidden levels of abstraction. So these fetchers point to fetch, but fetch is not the fetch we know and love. It's a fetcher that you supply. And by default, it will be the e-commerce default fetcher. Which ends up using this use fetch. So this is like the e-commerce default fetcher. And this use fetcher, so this would be a level 4 abstraction. I guess all of these are level 4 abstractions, which I didn't realize yet or previously. So use hook, use SWR hook, use mutation hook, and use fetcher are all level 4 abstractions. But this use fetcher has a use commerce hook inside of it. And then finally we get to something recognizable, which is this is all a glorified wrapper around the React context API. Okay, so that's how this is working. So this use commerce is the level 5 abstraction. And then the level 5 abstraction is using React itself. It's passing an argument, but this is like, at this point, it's React itself. You could say it's a level 6 abstraction if you want, but the level 6 abstraction is from React. It's not from our framework. Okay, so it's a 5-level abstraction deep when we chase this fetcher route down. Here is function. Yeah, so use commerce, that's going to be equally deep. Use fetcher, samesies. Question, the questions are any of these deep. Use callback is the React use callback. So here you can see we have use hook, which is another level deeper. And then that ends up using callback. So use fetcher was 5. Use hook is also going to be 5 unless this function provider takes us further, which it does. So that's going to be 6. And the reason is because function has to be a provider, which is another abstraction that they have. Okay, and I think we actually briefly touched on that. So context API is the top level React abstraction. Provider type is the top level e-commerce abstraction. Commerce provider. That's the top level. That's the top level abstraction that I'm going to hold against them. I mean, technically it's commerce config and this thing, so you could say, oh, that's another level of abstraction. I don't consider it that way. I think that's just like a syntactically nice way of organizing your types, and that it's an equal level of abstraction complexity. Fetch cart input is, again, it's a type. So I'm going to say all these types that it's just a syntactically nice way of organizing types. They're not actually different levels of abstraction in my view. So this provider is the top level abstraction in the e-commerce framework paradigm. Okay? And so that would be a depth of 6. Okay? So fetcher, use commerce went up to 5. Use hook, we have use commerce, but it also has function, which is a provider. And so provider is the higher abstraction there. So that's well, I guess it's also a level 5. It's just a different level 5. That's kind of splitting hairs, whatever. So there is a implemented provider, like BigCommerce. And then you could argue that the provider type is a higher abstraction than that. So that would get you to your 6, 5 and 6. Or you could be like, dude, that's splitting hairs, it's 5. I don't really care. So 5 or 6. Use hook, let's see. That's another abstraction. And then it touches use callback, which is, we're finally getting back to React. So let's dive into use hook and see if it has any more jankiness in there. No, this is a singular level. There's nothing nested in here. So it's a singular level of abstraction. Okay. So this is level 4, and then use fetcher is level 5. Oh, yeah, use fetcher is level 5 in this route. So elsewhere we were using fetcher, and it only got us to 5. But here this is a wrapper around fetcher. So this would be 4, 5, and it becomes 6 in that branch. Use hook, wraps use data, is use data. I think that's a custom hook. I don't think that's a React thing. So here's, oh, great. So here's use data, which has a type error, which is hilarious. So I've never touched this file. So deep in the abstractions is a big error. Actually, it's a small error, whatever. I don't want to exaggerate. But deep within the abstractions is an error. So this guy is kind of crazy. Hook input, okay, that's the, after use hook, there's a result. And then this is the fetcher. It's going to end up doing, does it end up using use fetcher? No. It just accepts a fetcher argument. Okay. Define is loading. Okay. So this is a singular level of abstraction if you don't count the hook, because that's accounted for elsewhere. So that would be like creating the hook would be another level of abstraction, but we're already counting that. So use data is basically like a 1. Yeah, because see, here's use hook, and we already counted that. So this is like 1 more. So use SWR hook is 4, use fetcher is 5, use commerce is 6. The other branch is use SWR hook is 1, use or is 4, use hook is 5, use data is 6. So either way, this SWR path is 6 levels deep, and same thing with this mutation way. So that's 6, 6. Yeah, basically it's I would consider it like a 6-level deep abstraction, is this hook composition API. And it's specifically an SWR hook composition API. So it's really complicated, and it's not friendly to non-commercial feature sets. Like I want to add my own API where I'm doing my Futurecaster things, like register a user to Futurecaster, not to a commercial site. My Futurecaster user gets like their fortune told, and they get stuff registered to their account, like custom art and comments that they make, and all of these things. Those don't integrate well, ultimately because of this provider type. In addition to, ultimately because of this provider type. So all that hook composition API is basically a forcing pattern that forces consistency in your commercial APIs. But does it even enforce consistency? Because look at all the optionals. Everything's optional. So how much consistency is there? Because all that stuff is optional. So really, all provider does is guarantee that there's a fetcher. Okay, that's good. I'm on board with that, because even if you're non-commercial, you still need a fetcher. And even if you're using SWR by itself, you still need a fetcher. So I'm happy with that. But this trick right here, commerce config, is a problem. It's a subtype that includes locale and cart cookie. Locale I'm on board with. Even if you're non-commercial, you need a locale. Locale referring to the language that the user speaks. So this is for like translation, right? So Spanish, English, French, etc. You would want even the difference between like British English and American English. Those are different locales to facilitate at least translation and potentially other things. Like in a commercial setting, there might be different tax rules depending on your locale. Okay, so I'm still on board with that. The problem is cart cookie, really. If we want to get technical in the weeds, what is the problem with this provider type? And what makes it incompatible with non-commercial is the cart cookie. There's a couple ways around this. One is, so that's one problem, is the cart cookie. And then the other problem is that even if you solve for cart cookie, how much consistency are you really getting? Like the entire abstraction is more cost than benefit, if you ask me. Because at the end of the day, the supported methods are platform specific. And by platform specific here, I mean like BigCommerce, So maybe I should say provider specific. At the end of the day, the functions here are provider specific. So this really operates as a like really broad superset. It's almost like we would think of like state in Redux or something. Where you might have any of these things, but they're not really guaranteed. And in that sense, you could get on board with a non-commercial. Like I could do over here, I could do art. You know, like any given provider might have art. But in my head, what I really know is that I'm the only provider that actually has art. So why am I even using this abstraction, right? It should be a Futurecaster specific type. So we shouldn't even be using the provider type because there's nothing reusable. Everything's optional. There is some reusability across commercial, like, you know, BigCommerce and Shopify both have carts. There's a whole problem where, like, do you really, for any actual website, do you really have two carts, or are you going to want to force them through one cart? I guess that's an architectural question. Maybe some people out there want a single website that in the background has two different carts. Personally, I don't want that. I want like a single cart. And in practice, what this means is that I'll probably just like delete these folders. For Shopify Swell, like delete the providers that I don't want. I'll just delete them in practice probably. But if I wanted to support multi-shop, what I would do is I would have my Futurecaster store, and all the requests would go through my Futurecaster API, and I would do the orchestration on the back end, not here. So that's another comment. Basically, all of those comments are to the effect that even if we solve for the cart cookie thing, which we can do, even if we solve for it, there's just not much to be gained for a non-commercial feature set like Futurecaster features to be using this provider type. So really, in the e-commerce paradigm, Futurecaster is not properly a provider. It's something else. Really, Futurecaster doesn't belong in the e-commerce framework at all. It should be a sibling of the framework folder. So for 2.0, that's a lesson learned. That's a thing we're going to do. Is we're going to move it up a level so that it'll be even with framework. So what about this cart cookie? There's like 3 ways to address it. One is we can throw our hands up and go, Futurecaster itself doesn't have a cart. Screw this cart cookie. It doesn't work. That's one thing you can do. That's kind of like, yeah, that's like one reaction you can have. 2 is you can go, all right, well, I want to comply. So the Futurecaster API, I'm going to include a cart cookie even if I never use it. It's just going to be like an empty string that just kind of goes around with me just for the sake of provider consistency. So if I thought it was valuable to be a provider, that's actually what I would do. I wouldn't be like, this can't work. I would just carry around the empty string. Option 3 is you could make this commerce provider. You could create an additional level of abstraction. You could call this commerce provider, and that would become like provider and cart cookie. Right, this is pseudocode, but then I would have another type, export type provider, which is all this stuff down here except the cart cookie. So option 1 is you throw your hands up, it won't integrate. Option 2 is you integrate it by conforming to the type, and then option 3 is you create a new type. Okay. Option 3 is problematic because what that does is that moves me away from the e-commerce architecture from the upstream remote so that I cannot any longer merge all of their changes seamlessly, which is like a design goal that I have. I want to be able to keep getting all the goodness that they put into the framework. Why am I even using the framework? Like, why use Bootstrap? Why use Material? Why use why use React? so that when they upgrade it, I get the stuff for free. Why use Angular if you're going to go that route? You know, why use Node? Why use Express? Why use any of these tools? You want to be able to rely on them and upgrade easily and get all their goodness for free. So I can't break this provider pattern and expect that goodness to be for free. I would have to refactor every time. And maybe those refactors would be small and maybe not. In any case, I don't prefer option 3, and I obviously don't prefer option 1, which is like, it just can't work. So the remainder is option 2, where I'm carting around abstraction baggage that's irrelevant for me, and it's just inefficient. Because at that point, Futurecaster API is just carting around all of this shit that at the end of the day, it's not going to use. Okay, I might use some of this. I'd use these 3. I would have sign up, sign in, sign out, right? Even though I'm non-commercial, I would still have auth. Maybe I would have some of this other stuff. Like, I think about having a user in Futurecaster more so than having a customer, but maybe I just call them customer for the sake of consistency. I imagine I would probably search things at some point. I don't know. Maybe I just go ahead and consider whatever is being searched. Maybe I just call them products, even if that's kind of an awkward abstraction for the sake of consistency. We see how we're like doing this for consistency, for consistency, for consistency. It's all for the value of consistency, but the costs are not free. The costs are stacking up. Wishlist, I just really have a hard time seeing in the Futurecaster API a need for a wish list. I have a hard time seeing that. I mean, maybe I could create that feature. Am I creating features for the sake of consistency now? And then cart, Futurecaster just doesn't have. That is the whole scope of the store at that point. And then Futurecaster does have a fetcher, so that's good. And then sure, we can use locale, but we don't want cart cookie. So maybe like half of it. I feel like that's kind of generous, but we could get compliance with half of it. The thing is that compliance to implement that is really expensive because we have to return back to the composition, and I have to implement consistency with like their mutation hook thing and like their fetch options and the weird way that they're doing fetcher instead of the simple alternative and like their use hook thing. So basically, I think it's too expensive. That's my personal judgment at the end of the day. I think the costs outweigh the benefits. And so that's the lesson learned is just use SWR directly. If we want to get the value out of the e-commerce framework, let's have it not deeply integrated. Let's have it, the e-commerce framework is going to like do the store, and then I'm going to do my stuff over here. We're going to have a fun experiment that I don't know how it's going to work out, where we may mix and match pieces when it comes to the actual UI. Like the actual UI, what broke? What did I even do? Oh yeah, I'm sure I edited something, didn't I? Okay, whatever. What did I do? Cannot read current of undefined. Bro, I definitely ruined something. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. Include products. Okay, just refreshing fixed everything. Fine. I have no idea, to be honest. Okay. There's going to be this fun part where I like mix and match UI components. Like this, clicking this is going to be Futurecaster, but they're going to have like clothes that's like the store, right? And then maybe you go to the store page and it's going to be like, hey, Jay Vanderveer, which is Futurecaster data. It's not coming from BigCommerce, right? So that the components are going to be mixed and matched. And I may even mix and match. I think I'm going to have to mix and match hooks. But here's the good news that I have hope for. These match fine. These hooks, the end hook of use customer and use cart the end result hook integrates fine with use SWR hooks. All you got to do is alias them, and there's no conflict. So this part, I see like no complexity. It looks equally complex as SWR. You still need at least the 1 or 2 levels of abstraction, right? As long as I don't have to deal with complying with the hook composition, then I think I'm good. And as long as I can say, yeah, these types, like the cart type and the customer type and the user type, they're totally different. Like my Futurecaster types are totally different than provider types. And I think I totally can do that. Like there's no reason that I can't do that. So a shallow integration where we just integrate at the component level, and then like MVC, like the services and stuff are segregated. That's what we're going to go for in Futurecaster 2.0, and I'm hopeful that it will work. So starter is not awesome. That is really a reflection of it's not best practices to follow the hook composition API. And it's not best practices that all API providers need to comply with the Commerce API provider. This is like getting into the nitpicking, but I also think it's not a best practice that I need to maintain like these 2 siblings and like merge up on the one. So the best practice would be like a command line upgrade tool. If I could just say, so there's like a Vercel. There is a Vercel command line, right? We know that. I'm running it right now. I'm not using yarn dev. I'm not using npm start. I'm using Vercel dev, which is a really great command line tool, and it injects environment variables and it does a lot of great stuff for me. Facilitates deployments. So I should be able to do like Vercel upgrade, like Vercel upgrade or Vercel upgrade e-commerce, but honestly it should recognize the e-commerce piece itself based off the configurations that exist. So Vercel upgrade would be the best practice. Rather than me having to maintain stuff, I just upgrade and you apply the relevant changes for me in a way that doesn't conflict and in a way that is like not making it, not forcing me to have an opinion about whether the integration is deep or shallow, like you support either way. I think that would be the best practice, and I recognize that's hard for them, but it's like another reason that it's not awesome is that I have to accept this cost of syncing with the upstream in a manual way. So that's what I mean by it's not awesome. I don't mean it's zero value. It does have at least potential. More so, it seems like potential for a standalone site that's shallow integrated, and I'm hopeful that that's going to work. Okay, let's move on. Supabase, mediocre. There's the insecure JWT. Let's say I go over here. Magic links are so great, right? Let's send it. I'm going to take this off screen so that you don't see my email. Yeah, I'm fine with you knowing my email address, but I don't want you to actually read my emails. So I go over to my email, and it does send me the magic link. It's great. I'll copy the link address. Just sends me an email from Supabase. That's fine. Here's the link address. And I think this address is also fine. So this is obfuscated. So that's good. But when I hit enter, something bad happens. Boom. The obfuscated token expands into a non-encrypted JWT that's visible in my URL. Okay, and I'm going to prove to you that this isn't encrypted. We're going to go over to jwt.io. This is like some fake John Doe boilerplate. I'm going to paste my token in there. And you see, it has my information unencrypted. The one that I'm really worried about is email address. With Iron Session, this would be encrypted, so you wouldn't be able to see it unless you have the private key, the salt, which is stored on my server, and it would be an environment variable secret that is not exposed to the client. And that would be better. So So basically, this is a big security issue, and it's not just me saying this. They even recognized it. I created the GitHub issue, and the CEO over there was like, yeah. What's his name? The same guy who wrote about functions, Paul Copplestone, acknowledged the issue. Kudos to them for acknowledging the issue. But I need to fix it or I can't ship to prod. Basically, it makes it a dev tool, like a non-prod tool, until that gets fixed. Maybe it's in my discussions? No. It's in like my dashboard. How do I get to my dashboard? Bro, GitHub, don't fail me now. Okay. Recent activity. No, it's just my pull request to iron session. Okay. Go true is where they put it. So go true is the name of the Supabase authentication service behind the scenes. I think I'm in here somewhere. I just search my name, maybe. Is there like a my issues? Okay, issues. Yeah. You remove user email from session, right? Right. So this is the issue if you want to go check it out. 114 on the GoTrue repo. Here is the CEO considering it validated, as I mentioned. So I originally filed it on Supabase itself. They shipped it over to the auth repo. That makes sense. He says it's a valid consideration, although it could break compatibility with the Netlify server. So basically, it's not a super high priority. Return a successful response. Yeah, and this is like another issue that somebody else made that's kind of related. Dang, actually I didn't mention in the magic token here. Should I mention that too? Yeah, I'll mention it too. Unencrypted JW2 also ends up in the URI during magic token password reset flow. Password reset. I said send magic link. Yeah. During send magic link flow. In the auth settings tab. To the Supabase UI, perhaps in auth settings alongside external OAuth providers. Supabase and application servers could share this secret without without exposure elsewhere. Okay, great. So I think I beat that to death. Okay. So the insecure JWT nukes the value of auth for free. What we could do, as I was trying to do, is bring in next iron session. Supabase JWT becomes the child, but next iron session is the encrypted parent, and so as a result, Supabase session is also encrypted, which is awesome. The problem is that JWT handoff doesn't work. What this means is, I'm John, I log into Supabase, okay? Then I give my session to Iron Handler. Iron Handler encrypts it. Iron Handler sends the client an encrypted Iron session. The client does some stuff, changes pages, does some stuff, and ships it back to my application server. Iron session decrypts it. Supabase session is decrypted correctly, right? We saw that I got the Supabase session, right? It was working. Where was that guy? Use sign in. Where was it, man? Sign in, sign up. I think it was sign in, not sign up. No, it's not this one. Supabase session. Okay, user TS. Don't know what I was thinking. Okay, let's close the other tabs. Close to the right. Yeah, so this this is decrypted properly, and I get the data that I want. The problem here, you see here I'm using Prisma. What would be nice is if I could just use the Supabase client here. And I wouldn't need to bring in Prisma. I could just use the Supabase client. The issue with the Supabase client is that when I tell, hey, Supabase client, here's your session, it gets confused. The Supabase session is like, the Supabase client is like, no, I decide the session. You can't just tell me the session. Even though GoTrue API has like an undocumented API to drop an arbitrary session in, it doesn't work. And I created this issue. Anyway, whatever, I'm not going to go show it. But I created that issue on the repository too, and they were like, oh yeah, good point. So I guess they're going to fix it at some point, but it's not working right now. So basically, JWT handoff doesn't work. Okay? Doesn't mean we can't use Supabase, it just means we can't use the Supabase client. So I'm having to introduce tools to compensate for Supabase. There's like, I have to introduce the Iron Handler, I have to introduce Prisma client, which is kind of okay because I'm already using Prisma for seeding and stuff, so like why not use the client too, right? But I'm losing out on all the benefit of Supabase. Supabase is like, hey, we have a component library for you to use. Yeah, but if you use it, it exposes your session and stuff in the UI, so I can't use your component library. I also can't use your client on the back end either. I did use it to some extent. Is this just a type? Okay, I can use the interface, that's great. Guess it's something. This is another case where I do have some hope though. What if I don't use the Supabase client, and if I go directly for the GoTrue client? Here I have to write my unencrypted JWT. Like normally this might be a problem, except that if I'm doing it on the server side, I'm fine with that. Where is I think I have GoTrue client somewhere, do I? No. What is the Supabase client is what I have today. Oh, this is within their node modules. Yeah, see, here's the Supabase key. This is like the authorization headers. That's what I overrode manually, but it didn't work. Why is it searching in my node modules? Supabase. Okay, I need to exclude node modules. Wow, okay. Okay, great. So another ray of hope. And then we definitely want Supabase for the Postgres database itself, right? Like that part is good. But it's a bummer that the auth really is not for free. And the JWT handoff currently doesn't work. And then serverless functions is like another thing that would be a great value from Supabase. And they just came out with alpha, but alpha doesn't do what I need. The part that I need, they released timeline, so good on them for releasing timeline. But it's going to be Q4 for early preview customers, which is not me. So I'm not going to see it until at earliest next year. And this is basically arbitrary serverless functions, which is what I need. So I need a backend, right? I have the Vercel functions option. It would be nice if I could just use Supabase functions because I'm doing all the Supabase stuff, and I'm pretty sure the latency is going to be smaller there. If I can go, Supabase functions, Supabase database connection, I'm pretty sure that latency is smaller than the extra network Vercel calling Supabase. And so that's why I was kind of holding out that I would love these Supabase functions. It would be preferred if it worked right. It would be preferred for latency and performance reasons, basically. But they don't exist, so it's not preferred. So I either need like Vercel cloud functions, which I'm going to give that a try in 2.0. That's a lesson learned. Or we can always go for like Amazon Web Services or just like something else. Like there's so many cloud function providers. We could use any of them. In a terrible scenario, I could even use a non-serverless backend, like a traditional server. Node.js Playground. There is RunKit. I think RunKit has, you can do RunKit functions, which I'm not 100% sure if they're serverless, but that would just be another option if I didn't want to use Vercel cloud functions. So anyway, that's another thing is like the serverless functions aren't going to work. There's a couple pieces of good news. One is this like maybe go true client directly will work. And then one of the things that I love about Supabase is that it's basically lock-in free. Because it is a Postgres database, I can always take it and move. So I'm really happy about that. The downside is at this point, it's basically a non-prod tool. But the good point is that it's like a really cool non-prod tool with a free tier Postgres. And if they solve the other issues, there would be a ton of value there. Of course, part of me is worried, like, once they solve all the other issues, they're going to drop free tier. I don't know. Anyway. And then the fourth element of the architecture is Prisma. Prisma has never let me down. They implemented Prisma DB push, which is awesome. Here's a link. You can check it out. Prisma 3 is on the way. They're going to do semantic versioning. Big fan of all that. And so we're going to move the Futurecaster up a level and get crack-a-lackin'. That does it for reviewing learnings. Let's try and upgrade Git. I'm going to take this off screen a minute because I got the notice from GitHub through my email that said that I was using like a deprecated pattern. Cool. You can see this, I think. I don't really care. This one email. Y'all can see this, right? Yep. So it says, Vanderveer, you used a username and password. And they're like mad about that. So let's fix it. Visit this for more information. Let's do that. Oh, this is the same web page I have open here. So yeah, so how do I do it? What you need to do today. For developers, if you're using a password, you must begin using a personal access token. Sounds good to me. By August 13th. It's July 31st. Good thing I'm reading this. Two-factor would be cool. How do I create the token? Personal access tokens are an alternative to using passwords. Woo! Okay, let's go to settings, dev settings, personal access tokens. Cool. Okay. Let's close this tab, but I'll talk you through it. SWR has been super great to me. There is one gotcha. The stale while refresh pattern is sometimes problematic from a business perspective. Ironically, one of the key cases where this can be dangerous from a business perspective is in an e-commerce context. So it's ironic that the e-commerce starter is like their big deal, right? So there's a legal problem if you display a stale price or offer, like a stale coupon, and so forth. These can constitute deceptive marketing. So I'm not going to name names, but there was a company that I was working for that this was like a real problem. Like displaying stale information was a real problem. So having progressive web app support in a different direction, which is just like showing an empty component, right? Like we showed YouTube earlier on the stream. I think I can replicate it right now. If you go to YouTube/channel and then you don't input a channel, does it really just hang out here? This is pretty embarrassing, YouTube. It's really, you should just redirect this to like youtube.com or something. But anyway, this is a progressive web app approach where this is like a view that you can see before things are confirmed. So like the while revalidating, the WR, this is not showing us stale data while it's revalidating. It is showing us basically like a loading experience, but we would call this like a skeleton app. In a progressive web app, you load a skeleton app that loads up really fast. You know, usually a loading experience would have the words loading or like a circle or like some loading indicator. Here we don't have a loading indicator, although it's really similar to a loading experience. We would consider this a skeleton view. So stale while refresh should support this, is what I think. And we should be able to identify it at the object property level. So I can show you stale products. Literally just the price of the product. I want it to be obfuscated in a skeleton-like pattern. That would be my dream world. That's a gotcha here. There are ways to handle it. Basically, you just have to handle it yourself. And they can let me know if there's like a built-in way to handle it. But basically, I would need to implement component level component level cache controlling, let's say it's right here. Let's say username, for whatever reason, is a sensitive data that needs to be validated. I would just need a different API that's like const data validator, use SWR. There would be some endpoint like validate. And here I would say, instead of just saying, hey, do I have the username data? I would need to say, do I have the username data and like validator like is valid, or perhaps is username valid if I want like the property level validation. So I would implement that myself. It would be nice if there was just like an option here, but I don't know if that's a thing. The reason that would be nice is not just because it saves me a line. Saving me a line, I could care less. The reason it would be nice is it saves me a network request. And that's a bigger deal in my book. Okay. So now we can close this tab. We reviewed the gotcha. Basically done with the learnings at this point. Link in the description if you want to go read more. Demonstrated the localhost issue with the exposed JWT, so we can close that. Done with this. Here's the GoTrue client that I haven't tried using directly. Hopefully it works. Let's close that. Talked about serverless functions. Going to keep a single localhost open. We'll keep Supabase open, Versal stuff. This is the JWT problem also, but this is my non-local. This is my remote dev. Keep that up. This is Pocketsmith. I'm not sponsored, but Pocketsmith is a cool finance app. Spotify, etc., etc. Right, so this is where we were. So let's go to GitHub. So the third thing that we're going to do today is start from scratch. I'm having a sneaking feeling we're not going to get that far because my wife texted me like, are you going to be done soon? So I'm going to get Git set up and dev. Going to get Git set up, and that'll probably do it for today. Dev, developer settings, okay. Generate new token. What's this token for? Local dev, I don't know. Am I going to need different ones for different machines? This is my gaming computer. I'll call it gaming comp. Local dev. 30-day expiration. Dude, why is it scary? Go away. Let's give it a 90 days, I guess, you jerk, whatever. It's so annoying. Okay. Repo, admin, all the things. I want it to do all the things. I guess really I just want, like, I don't need gists. I don't need delete repo. Okay, so we can do a little bit more fine-grained. I do need all the repo things. Probably want to deal with actions and packages, yep. Yeah, delete packages maybe. I don't need admin stuff. User, yes. Full control of repository hooks. I'm not sure if I'm going to need that to merge pull requests, would I? I don't think so, but we'll check it anyway in case, because the actions is a different thing over here. Maybe hooks are different from actions, so we'll keep it. Delete repo, I can always use my GUI for that, so I don't need command line. Cool. This works for me. Won't be able to see it again. Okay. Okay. I have it on my clipboard, people. What do I do now? Generate. Got it. Treat your tokens like passwords. Well, I already screwed that up because I showed it on... Okay, whatever. I'm going to do this again so that I guess y'all are not supposed to see it. Gaming comp local dev 2. "90 days, repo, workflow, packages, delete packages. User. Cool. All right, so now it's really top secret and you can't see it. Losers. Cool. Yeah, now what do I do? Authorize the token for use. Oh, I can use it just like a password. Okay, that's not bad at all. Okay. So I'm going to kill this. I'm going to take it off screen because I'll have to input the password, but I'll leave it on screen right up until the very end, just for you, my peeps. This is like a white space change. Versal does that. Whenever I run Versal, it changes the white space in my TS config, which is super annoying. Windows is terrible, so even though I control C like 50 times, it's going to take a solid 10 more seconds. I like Windows for the games. That's about it. Developing on Mac is the way to go for sure. I might have to like close the whole VS Code. Where's the other? Oh, did I push some research? Hold on. Next.js. I don't know. I guess I can do that. Oh, a freaking course. You show my... I have to make a new one now. Windows, you suck. But literally, where is that coming from? Oh, bookmarks. Okay. Some bookmarks. Okay. Yeah, let's... Local Dev 3, huh. Okay, hopefully I didn't rush that too much. I think that's going to be fine. Okay. Made local dev 3. VS Code, here we go. So I just need to change my password, right? Like that's it. Username, I think my username is already there. Get, how to read, or like log, get username. Git log, yeah. Oh no, that's not what I want. I just say git. It's in like my git metadata. I can go open up the text file if I need to. Okay. The git config, that's what it is. It was escaping me. Okay, git config. key does not contain. Okay, let's do global. Dude, I know you know my username. Okay, I'm gonna have to open it up on my my actual drive. I guess I don't care if y'all see this. Okay, so I'm on Windows, right? So under users, find my own user, git config. I'm gonna make sure my password's not in it real quick. Hold up. But anyway, now you know where the file's at, and then you just open it with a text editor. Yeah, my username is right there. Oh, is it because it's called name and not username? Okay, hold on. Get user.name. Haha. Okay. Yeah, password's not here, so I can show y'all this. So there's like there's like a section for user, and the name is under it. And feel free to shoot me an email at that address. It's a public address. And you can also visit my website, afterecon.com. Ta-da! Where I have recently blogged about the fact that unenforced borders are not the same as open borders and other fun stuff. Quote from David Friedman, Total Rockstar. Okay. So now we know that my name is good. What I want to do is set my password. Yep, so I just say git, and I'm going to take it off screen before I paste, but git config, right? Config user.password. Is this right? Because it's really hilarious to me that they're like, you can't use user and password, but isn't this technically, from a Git perspective, it's still user and password? Your token, yeah. Credentials in the keychain. Wouldn't that be nice? I don't have keychain on Windows. I think I just need to set the password like that, unless I'm tripping. Git config user.password, git config user.password. And now we go off screen. Boop. Magic words. Blah, blah, blah. Bunch of enters. Okay, so now I need to test it, right? So we're here in Futurecaster. Here is Futurecaster. I want to git branch. See what I got? Just main, right? Git branch archive. Git checkout. I could have done -c archive. And now it says we're switched to branch, but just to confirm, we have archive and main. Git push. Oh no, I don't have an upstream. So this should use my new credentials. Cool, it worked. It worked. Okay. Now I have a git branch, now in git checkout main. And then we're not gonna do this today, but this is the point. Now that I have the archive branch so I can refer to the changes that I made, this would be where I basically go ham and just nuke it. So here's all my GitHub repositories. This will be the Futurecaster. I could do this on the command line, but I could just like Control A delete basically, right? That's a bit rash. I probably don't want to delete node modules, so I don't need to reinstall. We will do this next time. So join me next time, and you'll see I will actually start the application from scratch. I might even go into the Versal GUI and like literally start it from here again, so that I can use their starter from here. I'll think about that some more. But yeah, next time what we're going to do is start Futurecaster 2.0. So get excited. So today, thank you for joining me. It was a lessons learned. It was a planning day. We upgraded Git, created the archive backup branch in case anything goes wrong on main. I can always revert. And next time, I think we have a really clear picture of the architecture, which is really great. So we'll get that e-commerce starter, create a folder next to the framework. It's going to be the Futurecaster folder, and all of my custom features go in there. And I have no need to integrate deeply to the hook composition API. I'll just be using SWR and unfetch, the isomorphic fetch library, in there. And I think we'll be able to move really fast. Under promise, over deliver, right? So we'll just get to parity, and I'll be able to log in, and you can see my name up there, my username or whatever. But there are a lot of features in store. This is not going to be done necessarily the next time we meet, but just to give you a taste of some of the features that we'll be doing soon. Let's go to the GitHub repository, and you can always leave an issue if you want to, but I also create issues on my own. So like, here's the stuff that we're going to do. So rebase commerce starter, this is basically like we're going to do 2.0. Tell user hello, we did that, but I'm going to leave it open because we're going to want to do that with 2.0. So special merch generator. This is going to be really cool. Unlockable models, fortune reactions. So currently, you go to, let's go to the remote URL so that you can actually visit. So if you would like to, right now you can visit futurecaster.versal.app. And it's really basic. And it has like this boilerplate next stuff, but we're going to be having Futurecaster stuff. We're going to have a hoodie that has like our own original art. So you cast your theme. You'll have a wicked evening and some mad good sleep. What you may not realize is that behind the scenes, there's a unique token generated for your fortune that just got told. That is going to be able to assign to your account. So you'll have your fortune told, and you can also like generate art and like generate merchandise based off of that token. So these are some of the really cool features coming out, and more. Potentially you could trade tokens with other people. Some tokens are going to be more rare than others. Some people are going to have like really crazy fortunes told, and others are going to be like really mundane. You're going to drink some juice, or like whatever. Oh, they knew it would be juice, not water. They're real fortune tellers. It's obviously all a joke, but it should be fun. And yeah, there's also a possible feature set where you can actually go back and be like, this didn't really happen, and we can like calculate statistical likelihood of you get a fortune and what are the odds that it actually happens based on feedback that we got. Social conversations, people can like talk about, oh, this happened, and like comment back and forth. Stuff's in the works. So I hope that teaser entices you to come out next time. Thanks for stopping by.